I guess I will start with the first question. Why did you choose to write from a male perspective?
Okay, so that was a really good question, right? The reason why I chose to write from a male perspective is when I first started writing, which was in 2007, I came into the industry not knowing that actually you could write female leads. Like, this is like, the world obviously has changed a lot now since like I started writing. And I think that, you know, we live in such a male dominated society. I just assumed when I first started writing that I needed to write a male actor as a lead. And that was something that I didn't even think I needed to ask the questions if it would be okay to have a female lead. I just assumed that that's just the way that stories are told. And so that's why Yemi became the lead and was the character, even though, I mean, obviously being a Black female and a Black woman, I could have written it from my perspective, but I just didn't know that it was possible. And that's why Yemi became the lead character.
I suppose I'll go ahead with the second question. How did you relate to being a man from Nigerian culture?
I mean, I've got a brother who I'm very close with. We're only a year apart. So what made it kind of easy to write that character was because literally I was more or less writing about my brother and I's experiences growing up on the North Peckham estate when I was growing up. So it was easy for me to kind of just take both of our experiences and kind of put that into the character Yemi. And obviously as well, as a writer, I mean, I'm quite observant. I watch people, I study people. So writing from a male's perspective wasn't a hard task for me because I was able to write about people that I know. And, you know, when you first start writing, that's the one thing that you're encouraged to do, which is to write about what you know and the people that you know and the world that you know. And so, yeah, it's just the world that I know. I grew up in Nigeria as well as England. My parents are Nigerian, I'm British Nigerian. So it was just an experience that I could relate to. So that's why I wrote about it.
So you said a lot about that you drew from your past experiences and the things that you can relate to, things you've lived through. Were there any things that you needed to do research on, things that you didn't quite see from your own life, or things that you wanted to look up a bit more before writing the play?
For Gone Too Far, no, I didn't, because I think it was literally, I was really writing a play that was kind of semi-autobiographical. And so I was able to just kind of, like, it was the world around me, it was the people that I knew, it was every character I'd met at some point in my life. So I was able to write about them. And then some characters were a mixture of people that I'd met. So someone like Amani was an amalgamation of loads of different girls that I'd met along the way growing up. And the same with Paris, to be quite honest. But yeah, like, I just felt that I knew that world, so there wasn't much research that I needed to do. However, in other works that I've done, I've had to kind of do quite a bit of research, and kind of like, if I don't understand the world and I don't know the settings, then I will do loads of research to find out backstory, for sure.
So you already answered my question I was going to ask next, which is about the characters. How did you write them? You just said that you very know them already, so I'm going to skip on to the next question, which is, why did you write this play and what were you trying to say through it?
Well, originally why I wrote this play is kind of bound to the question of, I wanted, growing up, so I went to a drama school called Identity Drama School, which was one of the first Black drama schools in the UK, which is home to obviously now John Boyega, Letitia Wright, Damson Idris, like all these top Black actors all went to the same drama school. I was like one of the first few students when the drama school started. And when we would do plays, there was never any, we would never have any plays with Black characters who had experiences that I'd lived through. So we would never find a play that was set on an estate, or we wouldn't find a play that had any young Black women or young Black men in it. And I just felt kind of disheartened by that as someone trying to be an actor who couldn't find roles that I could relate to. So I decided that I was just going to create a play, and the biggest thing that I wanted to start off with, whereas I guess my protest with when I started, was that I wanted to write a play that had African names in it. Because like, I was like, I exist in the world. Why have I never seen a Bola or an Ade or an Ola on television before? And so that was like the first thing that just, I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to create African characters who had experiences like me. And that was the kind of thread that kind of, I started pulling away at that. And then it was like, well, write about what you know, write about the world that you know. And so that's why I wrote about Gone Too Far, because it was an experience that I understood and I knew.
Would you say that that's really interesting? Would you say that when you were younger, seeing that there weren't people like you in the media that you were consuming, how would you say that affected you, and why do you think it's important for children now to be experiencing media with them in it, people like them, people who they can relate to?
Because I think that, I mean, I'm a dreamer, right? I'm a writer because I'm a dreamer, and that's why I'm a creative, right? And growing up, when I was in English, in my English classes and in my drama classes, when we would do plays and we would do stories, there were never any characters that looked like me. So although I'm reading a book, I'm always putting myself in those stories, right? Whenever you watch television, whenever you're reading a book, whenever you're watching a play, there is something in you that puts yourself into that world and into those characters. And so it does feel disheartening when the world doesn't recognize you and the world tells you you don't exist. And so that had a huge effect on me, because I think that's also part of the reason why I stopped being an actor. I wasn't even that good either, to be quite honest. That was the second reason. I wasn't the best in the class. But the first reason was that I wanted to then create worlds where actors could act, and also people could see themselves in those characters. Like, and it's not to say that, like, I always say this to everybody, like, you can read a play like Gone Too Far and you might know an Amani, you might know a Paris, you might know a Yemi, but it doesn't mean that Yemi and that Amani are representations of all Black people. So it doesn't mean that, like, you know, Amani represents every mixed race girl in the whole entire world. It doesn't mean that. But at the same time, what I wanted to do was create worlds and create examples of characters that exist in the world, because we exist in the world. And I think it's important for us to see ourselves reflected back, because when people don't see that, I think that that's where we get problems, when we meet people from different races and different places, where there's not a level of understanding. You know, our first experiences of people, especially when you're younger, is TV, film, books, plays, you know. So I think it's important to have good representation, for sure.
My question is, how did you get into writing plays if you started off as an actor, and what was the process of that?
So yeah, I decided that I wanted to create stories instead of trying to find stories where I wasn't in. So I did a writing course at the Royal Court Theatre. The Royal Court Theatre is a theatre that's in Sloane Square. And I Googled writing courses. And at the time, there was a writing course that was aimed at actually Black writers. And so I applied for it. And it's a 10-week course that happens like once a week on an evening. You go there, and a playwright and a teacher basically teaches you structures of playwriting. And I learned that, and that's where I wrote Gone Too Far. After the 10-week course, we're encouraged to write a play, and I wrote Gone Too Far.
Right. So as a mixed race girl myself of West Indian background on that side, to me, it was special myself to see someone like me, to see Amani, even though I don't specifically relate to her, like you were saying, I would like to think that I'm not like Amani. But it's good, and it's nice to see someone like me, someone who is from the kind of background that I'm from, on the stage doing things that I like doing, not Amani, but acting, performing. And it's wonderful to see, and I know that it would be helpful for other girls and everyone like me, people. I've always struggled to find myself within the media. I've struggled with my identity, and seeing the progression of people like me writing plays, people like me being in plays, is so inspirational, and I know it will be for a lot of children in the classroom. And I think that the classroom is the perfect place to start that kind of thing. So I thank you for writing this play, and I'm really excited for it to be to be in classroms.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, I wish that, I always say that, like, if I was my 15-year-old self, like, I would have loved to had a play like this when I was doing GCSE drama, because we didn't have it at all. And so yeah, so it's nice to hear that, like, and I did write from the perspective of like, I'm writing for people like yourselves, because I do think it's important for you to have characters that you can explore, and they don't need to be like you. Like, I'm sure that playing Amani is going to be far removed from who you are, which is fun, because I mean, it's fun for you to play other people, and that's what acting is all about, you know. So yeah, I'm glad that that resonates with you. Thank you.
Another question is, how did you tell the female story through the male characters, and how did you find that?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, when you're writing, you have to learn structure. You have to learn like who's the lead, who are the supporting characters. How do you also tell a story for the supporting characters that help support the character who the story is mainly about. So the story is about Yemi, and Yemi's on this journey of self-discovery, but along the way he meets all these different people that kind of help explore his identity and figure out the things that are not quite right with him. And I guess with his arguments with Amani and Paris, well, Amani in particular, but that argument is the catalyst that kind of throws them off their journey, in terms of, you know, he's meant to go and get some milk, but he gets into this argument with these girls after obviously he has the argument at the shop, but that throws him on to a different journey. And so the aim is always, when you're writing, to make sure that you create characters who all have a need and a want. And so their needs and wants are either an internal need. With Amani, she's a character that thinks she knows herself but clearly doesn't. She has a journey that she's going on herself in the story, and so the idea is just to kind of create characters and create worlds where there's conflict, because that's what pushes a story forward, but also that conflict can be resolved through the journeys of your characters. So those are the tasks that you kind of have, but also it's important that when you create worlds that people can see and relate to. And when you're creating characters, especially characters like Amani and Paris and Yemi, the idea is always to create these characters that live, I guess it's a mirror to society, that these are lived experiences. And so that's kind of how like I was able to kind of mix all those things together, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
It does.
Good.
Another one, and the question. How did you tell the female story through the male characters? Even though it was a male-led play, the main character was a man, there were still female roles, and I'd like to ask you how you expressed the experiences and the stories of those females in your play.
Well, I guess it's more related to the theme of the show. So the theme of the play is about identity and a sense of belonging. So each of those characters had an identity question that they had going on. Even at Paris, like, although sometimes people see Paris as this kind of, she's the friend who's silent, who kind of doesn't, you know, she goes along with her friend until the end where they have their little bust up. But at the same time, her sense of belonging comes from her sense of belonging with her friendship with Amani. So the idea is to give each of the characters a want and a need, like I was saying before, but at the same time, I guess the bigger arc of the story is that everybody is trying to figure out who they are and where they belong, whether it's within their friendship group, whether it's within their family, whether it's within the society in the world. And so those are the questions that I have for each and every one of the characters in the story. And so especially the main characters. And so then the idea is to try and figure that out through dialogue and through their interactions with each other.
Another question is, how did you envision the play on stage? Are they are they constantly walking on stage? How do you envision it?
That's actually a good question, because it's like set on an estate. So I grew up on the North Peckham estate, and the North Peckham estate was this massive estate that was in London, in Peckham, that got demolished in like I think it was like early 90s. Maybe early 90s, late 90s. But it was like one of the biggest estates in the world, right? And so we would you could literally go in one end and walk to another part of the estate and find yourself in a maze, like constantly going around. And so the idea in my head was that that's what the journeys were for these characters. However, obviously a stage is just like that. So what we did is that we had this amazing choreographer who would, in terms of the movement, we would have these movement breaks that would happen after each of the scenes. So you understood that they were going from place to place. So at the end of each act, they would do this kind of dance break. It was like this cool dance break that would come on in the middle. And so you get a sense that like we were moving from place to place, but ultimately we were just on the estate. And we didn't need much of a set. Oh, sorry.
No, carry on. It's interesting what you're saying.
Yeah, no, we didn't need much of a set because I guess it's such a character-led show, and it's set outside, it's set on the estate. I didn't want it to be, because there's the bad version of a play like this is putting graffiti all over the stage and kind of building these kind of horrible grey buildings, and we didn't want to do that. We just wanted to kind of focus on the characters and focus on the world, and you knew that you were coming to an estate, because that's where the story's set and that's where the characters lived. So we didn't want to do too much when it came to that.
But also for me, how did you set like the sub characters? Like how did, like when Imani was having conversations, how did you envision that on them? And like when the mum was calling and things like that.
Oh, mum was always off stage. We didn't actually have an actor for mum. The person who played in the original Gone Too Far, the person who played Paris doubled up as the mum. And so she was constantly off stage being the mum. And the idea was, again, like, I guess because it was a story about young people, having the mum not included in the story, and not seeing the mum, it always reminded me of, do you remember, like, I mean, you guys are quite young, so I don't know if you do remember, but you know, in Tom and Jerry, right, there was always that mum character who would come in every now and then, right, but you never saw her, you just saw the feet. So that was one of the inspirations that I had. But also, like, I just felt that, like, we didn't necessarily have to see the mum to know that of her presence, because her presence is so massive anyway. So yeah.
I'd like to ask a bit more specifically about the relationship between Imani and Paris, and the differences between how they are struggling with identity, and how they break apart in the end, and how you think that it would be beneficial for young people to see that, and how you feel about their characters and their relationship.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I went to an all-girls school, so part of that dynamic of like the relationship between Paris and Imani was some of the relationships that happened in schools that I went to, where it's like, you know, when you're around girls 24/7 as teenagers, it can sometimes be, it's a lot, there's so much tension that happens. But also I just wanted to explore friendship groups, and I think that one of the things of Paris and Imani that I wanted to in particular give a voice to Paris, because I think that especially in society, darker skin actors don't necessarily always get the roles, or they don't get an opportunity to have their say. And I think for me, obviously as a dark skinned woman, I wanted to explore what that was like for a character to be able to speak their mind and speak their point of view, and for her to kind of have something to say, because she did have something to say. Like, her friend would treat her in a horrible way, and she kind of had to take it. And there came a point where she was able to kind of stick up for herself. And I think I wanted to explore that, because I think that whenever I'd seen shows that had a light-skinned woman and a dark-skinned woman, I think sometimes the dark-skinned woman is erased from conversations. How she's spoken about is always spoken in a very negative way. And I just wanted to flip that on its head completely. Like, I didn't want to, like, when I was growing up, like, one of the films that was a big influence on me was Coming to America, right? I don't know if you've seen the original Coming to America. Right, so in Coming to America, there was the light-skinned sister that Prince Hakeem loved, and then there was the dark-skinned sister that everyone kind of just thought was this joker. Whereas when I was growing up, I thought she was so beautiful and she was amazing, and I just wanted to see more of her character. So that was, again, an inspiration for me to create characters that, like, I know exist in the world, and also I want to explore and kind of like give voices to. And my aim is always to kind of give voices to characters that I think that just don't get an opportunity to say their piece and say their mind.
Also, how are you involved in the production of Gone Too Far?
Oh, so I was there every day in rehearsals, which is interesting, because you get to see actors speaking your words. You get to see the world come alive. You get to see what works, what doesn't work. And so, yeah, how it works in theatre is that you, as a writer, you come to rehearsals, you work alongside the director, you get to see the scenes that's being rehearsed. And I'm quite respectful, so I know it's a collaborative piece. So, you know, if an actor is having difficulty with a line, I'm willing to have a look at it to see how we can kind of adapt it and change it to make an actor comfortable. And yeah, for me, it's theatre is collaboration. So I'm involved to the point where I'm like, I love to see like work alongside people for it to come alive, basically.
The themes between the fighting between the West Indians and the Africans. How did you how did you feel writing that? And was it taken, how much was taken from your everyday life? How much was taken from what you'd experienced in your past?
Yeah, that was literally how it was like growing up on the North Peckham estate. Like it's such a weird thing to discuss now, because obviously the world has changed. And I think that like, obviously, like for younger generations, I think that you're either third or fourth generation migrants. So like in terms of your parents, like some people's parents have been here, you know, for 2 generations, grandparents have lived here or were born here. So I think it's slightly different for your generation. However, growing up, my parents came to England in the 80s. So I was like the first generation British born Nigerian on the estate. And then, but I knew friends who they were West Indian. And so their parents and grandparents were born in England. And so there was a lot of tension growing up in, especially in Peckham, in South London, between West Indians and Africans. And it wasn't nice. It wasn't great. I mean, what I tried to do in the play is obviously play the comedy of it and to kind of express it through comedy. But yeah, it was a horrible time growing up. But I'm glad to say the world has changed. People get along. And so it's not as bad as it is in my play. But I wanted to basically explore an experience that I went through. So that's why it's there, for sure. And also because the title of the original play actually was too long, but it was, Why Can't We All Just Get Along?
I find it quite interesting about the West Indian and African, I suppose, that war, I suppose, because growing up, me and my best friend, me and my best friend are both Jamaican and both Rasta though, yeah? So when we see like people be like, oh, I'm better than you because I'm from Africa, or I'm better than you because I'm from like Jamaica or Barbados or because I'm West Indian, me and my best friend find it quite strange, because growing up Rasta, we always taught like everyone's African, you know, and like people will come to my house and see like pictures of Africa up, and they'd be like, oh, I thought you're Jamaican. And I'd be like,
yeah, I know it's really weird, the divide. Like I just, growing up, I never understood it. Like I didn't understand it because I didn't understand that there was all this tension. But I mean, yeah, I'm glad to say that I think that your generation has definitely changed that a bit. Like, I don't think it's like, and especially because the world has got smaller. So there are artists like Wizkid and Burna Boy and Davido and all these African artists that I think that people can kind of latch onto, that has changed the way in which people view each other, which is good. But yeah, growing up, I think that there definitely was this massive tension, and I just wanted to explore that in the play, because I guess the themes of the play was about belonging and identity, but also that like we do need to get along with each other. Like we don't need to be having these fights, and we don't, and I guess the results of what happens in the play is because of those tensions and because of those fights, and we don't need to go that far, basically. That's why it's called Gone Too Far. Yeah.
Definitely. And a theme that I see stand out to me is puberty, but mental growth in terms of puberty, and how, what was it intended to be a theme, and how do you explore that?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to explore a theme of like teenage, like, you know, I wrote the play when I was like 27. I'm writing about teenagers. So I'm looking back at what it was like when I was younger, and that idea. And I think at the time when I was writing it, it was because I'd gotten to an age where, I was 26, sorry. But yeah, I got to an age where I was like, I really thought life was hard when I was a teenager, right? Like I thought that like life is tough and that it's me against the world, because Yemi's very much that as a character. Like it's literally like, oh, woe is me, life is tough. And I just then wanted to basically explore a play that kind of showed young people that actually like it's also about trying to figure out yourself. Like if you're grounded in yourself, like Ikudaisi is, right? Ikudaisi is the character that comes from Nigeria, very much aware of who he is, what he stands for, and he goes through life, although his brother obviously takes him him on a journey with him, but he goes through that journey being very aware of who he is and is a lot more happier than Yemi. And so I wanted to explore a play that looks at identity, because I think that sometimes if you're unsure about who you are and what you stand for, then you're not going to know whether you're going left or right. And I think that a lot of the times when, you know, I'm speaking for myself here when I say that, but like when I was a teenager, I didn't know who I was. I was ashamed of my name. I didn't like growing up on an estate. I had issues with my identity. And I think that when I got older, I was completely proud of my name. I was proud of who I am. I was proud of the fact that I grew up on an estate, because it gave me the ability to dream and to want better for myself. So all those things accumulated into the fact that like once I understood who I was, life became a bit more better for me, kind of thing. And I think that, but then I also, I say this by saying that as teenagers, I think that you're gonna have these identity crises. And I think that it's okay to have these identity crises. I think it's okay to have questions about who am I, where do I stand in the world, and where do I want to go in the world. And that's part of the story of Gone Too Far, because they're going on a journey. And by the end of it, Yemi does get a sense of who he is at the end of the story.
The identity that you speak about as a big theme in the play is especially something that I identify with. The struggle of identity and finding out who you are, living in a predominantly white area and not having an extensive amount of Black friends. It's always been hard for me. I don't live anywhere near my family, and they all live up in London. So it's always been just me and my father on our own, with me trying to find out who I am.
Yeah.
And so the way that you portrayed the identity and how it is in all different kinds of identity crises, trying to overcome it and find out who you are and who you want to be, what you actually want, not this false thing that you made up that you think that everyone else will like you, or you think that you do this and you're popular, or you do this and everyone will hate you. Not this false thing that society's created for us to follow. A true understanding of who you are and what you want to be and where you want to go with your life. And I think the way that you've explored the different types of identity in this play and the different types of ways that you can overcome that with people or without people is really something that resonates with me.
Oh, thank you. That makes me happy, because I think that that's definitely like the aim of a story like this. Like it is about, like, it's like I like people to take these stories and hopefully take something for themselves from it. And again, it's like what I said, like, yeah, I'm glad that like you can look at that and understand that like, it's okay, you're a teenager, like it's okay to have these questions. It's okay to kind of, you know, to not always feel like you know where your place is in the world, because actually everybody has been through that in life. Like everyone, there's nobody in the world that's not gone, I don't know where I belong, what is home. We're all gonna, and the thing is, you don't stop at those questions. As an adult, you're still going to ask those same questions about who am I, where do I stand in the world. That's whether you're at work, that's whether you're at home, that's whether you're with family and friends. So I just think that, yeah, hopefully, like I would like people to take that from a play like this, to know that like a sense of belonging is important. Trying to figure out who you are is important, but also not having the answers is fine as well.
A theme that I noticed in Gone Too Far was brotherhood. And I have brothers, but in my house it was me, my sister, my mom, so I experienced sisterhood, and I always wondered what it was like just to experience brotherhood, not the main theme that you explored. And how did you explore and how did you find it? And what?
Yeah, I mean, it's so odd because again, I've only got one brother, so there's 5 of us, there's one boy. But I've got loads of cousins. So my brother, and because my brother was the only boy, he was very like, my mum and dad would make sure that like my cousins would come over to play with him. And so like I was able to kind of see what that brotherhood was, because he would always have to hang out with like my male cousins and stuff, and see the dynamics that happened, because he was a spoilt boy in our house. And then when he's around other boys, they weren't gonna let him just get away with anything. So yeah, I was able to just, again, I'm writing experiences about people that I know. So it's about exploring just the worlds around me, telling stories about people that I know. And that's where I was able to kind of figure out that dynamic. And also brotherhood is the same as sisterhood, really. I mean, siblings are going to fight about sibling stuff. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a girl or a boy, it's the same thing. And so like in our house, like there was always tension between me and my siblings, like, because there was 4 of us in a 2-bedroom flat at the time, so 4 of us in one room, so there was a lot of tension.
Personally, myself, I'm an only child, so I don't really have the experience of brotherhood or sisterhood in any capacity, but the themes of family, and that family is always there to stick up for you. The fact of the brothers, which I've forgotten the name of again. Yeah, Ikudaisi and Yemi. The fact that even though Yemi has been completely ignoring and completely lashing out at Ikudaisi and just completely being horrible to him, Ikudaisi still stands up for Yemi and will still do that for him because they're brothers, and that's what family does. That's how family is. And I think that that's a really important theme to have in this kind of situation in a classroom, to show that there will always be people to stand beside you, even if you're having a horrible day, even if you think everything is messed up, there will always be people who will stand by you and fight for you.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I would say that that's definitely like the relationship that I had with my siblings. Like, we could fight all day long at home, but then when it came to outside, if I needed anyone to back me up, my siblings were there to back me up. Yeah, so for sure.
Another theme that I noticed was respect, and kind of a conversation about, is it earned and is it given? About I think, can't remember who said it to him, but someone was like, "Oh, I call my older sister auntie."
Mm-hmm.
She's not actually my auntie, but it's a sign of respect. And how did you explore that?
Yeah, because I think growing up as in an African household, like my parents are Nigerian, respect is a massive thing that we're taught. Like, it's a tradition that gets passed down in terms of like how you treat each other. You've got to have respect for your elders. There is a whole, like, we go through this whole thing of like, yeah, making sure that like you're when you're learning from each other, you're learning from your elders. Your elders are meant to guide you, they're meant to show you the way, and so you have to have a level of respect for them. But also, obviously, as the world is, sometimes people demand respect, but they don't always earn the respect, and that happens with parents as well, not just like siblings. So I wanted to basically explore that through the characters, that actually sometimes people talk about respect, but actually you need to be able to earn that respect from people. Like, it's not something that's going to be given to you freely. Like, you have to, there's a level of trust that comes with respect as well. I trust that you're going to treat me as a nice person, so I'm going to be respectful to you.
Within respect, I actually have not thought of another question yet, but I will think on the spot. Within the themes of respect, I think that the themes between Amani and Paris, the fact that Paris throughout the play starts to realize that Amani isn't giving her the respect that she deserves, so she decides to give it to herself. Yeah. She decides, I'm not having this anymore, I'm leaving, this is not what I need for me. I'm going to go elsewhere with my time. And I think that that is a really important and empowering thing to be teaching young children, young adults, whatever you like to call them, that it is okay to give yourself respect, have respect for yourself when others won't give it to you.
100%. I agree.
I loved the character of Paris as she grew as a person. She grew to understand that she was important too. She didn't have to follow around Amani all the time. She could stand up for what she believed in, and she could speak out. And I think it's really empowering and beautiful to see some Paris to do something like that. A woman, a dark-skinned woman who is usually quieter for a lot of the play, to stand up and say what she believes in, and to just walk away when she thinks that she's had enough, or when she has had enough.
Yeah, completely. I agree with that. And I just think it's like, it's also about, because I also wanted to create character, Paris as a character who wasn't, because everybody had a side, right? You had Yemi, who was just like, oh, I'm ashamed of being African. You had Ikudasi, I'm proud of being African. You had Paris, I'm proud of being West Indian, you know, and then, so I wanted to then create a character like Paris, who was just like, well, I'm West Indian too, but I'm respectful of Africans. Like, I'm not against African people. Like, I have my own viewpoint, and because I didn't want people to read the play and be like, well, all Africans think this, all West Indian people think this. Like, it's not a black and white issue. And I wanted to explore the play as well and give the world characters who are black, who have different viewpoints, because I think sometimes the world sees us and think that we, you know, even the same with me, sometimes I'll get questions from press and it's like, people expect me to be the spokesperson for blackness. And I'm not. I'm only the spokesperson for Bola Agbaje. You know, like, I can only speak for me. I can only speak about my experiences. I'm not the spokesperson for every dark-skinned woman on planet Earth, and I can't be, because all of our experiences are different. And so between Amani and Paris, I really wanted to explore those differences. Here were two characters who identified as being West Indian, but had different viewpoints about what that meant. And then the same with Ikudaisi and Yemi. Here were two characters who had different experiences of what it was like being African. Yemi being you know, Nigerian and British, Ikudaisi being someone who just came from Nigeria. So I wanted to explore that with all the different characters, just to show the world that actually we're a melting pot, but also we're complicated. We're not just black and white. So yeah,
definitely. And theme that ties into what you're saying is accepting and welcoming of culture and pride and national pride as well. And how do you explore that?
Yeah, I mean, if someone says to me, what are you British or are you Nigerian? I'm always like, I'm London. Like, it's so hard to pick a side, but one thing that I do know is that, like, my identity is that, like, I know what it's like to be a Londoner. Like, I know what that melting pot is. I know what that means to me. I've got pride about growing up in England, and being, but I wouldn't say that I'm British. I think that there's still a disjoint there in terms of, like, how proud I am to say that I'm British, because I also feel that sometimes I don't feel like I'm 100% accepted. So it's hard to claim something that people don't try to take away from you sometimes. But I do know that I'm a Londoner. Like, no one could ever say to me, you're not a Londoner. So I think that sometimes it's hard, and people will expect you to pick a side in terms of, like, who are you? Where are you from? But, like, for me, I think that it changes as time goes by, because there was a time where I was like, I'm African, and then I went to Nigeria, and Nigerians were very quick to tell me, you are not Nigerian, you're British. And then coming back to England with an African accent, and then people going, you're not British, you're African. So I'm always constantly trying to figure out, like, who I am. But one thing I can proudly say, if there was a flag that said I'm from London, I'd 100% rep that flag all day long.
That's quite crazy to me, because I don't think I'd ever say I'm Bristolian, you know. People would ask me, like, oh, where are you from? I would say I'm Jamaican. Yeah, but I think that
I think London is a unique, it's like people who are from New York. Like, when you're from major cities, I think that's the biggest difference, because, like, London is such a big city, is such a big melting pot. Like, it's very easy for people, like, around me, there are people from loads of different cultures and loads of different places. And so it's not something that's strange. Whereas I think when you go to outer London, in certain places, you might feel like a minority, or you might feel like there isn't many people that look like you or have experiences like you.
But that's the thing, though, that it's not that. It's not that, I don't think, because, like, I think in my primary school, like 200 and something languages spoken. Like, you were never ever the only Nigerian person, never ever the only Jamaican person, you know, never ever the only Somalian person. It's all quite mixed. But I think I say Jamaican as well, particularly because of, I suppose, slavery, you know, but slavery being taken from Africa and then being brought to Jamaica, and then the fact that I think Jamaica owes England money. For me, I feel like if I say I'm British, I'm betraying Jamaica.
I understand that, totally understand that. But I think that we've all got questions about identity and about, like, what our relationship is to the country that we're in. So, and I don't think there's anything wrong with having those questions.
Yeah. I think it's just a unique thing that can't really have a specific name, because it's quite hard to figure out.
Yeah, and I think that as well, when you're from, like, again, another reason why I wrote this play was because I wanted to explore what it was like being from a diasporan community. You know, like, my parents are 100% from somewhere else. Like, this is somewhere that they decided was their home when they were in their late 20s. Like, this wasn't something that there wasn't a world they grew up in. And so it's interesting to explore what that's like for a community of people who have a home elsewhere. Like, I've got a home in Nigeria, I have a place in Nigeria, I have family in Nigeria. So the idea that, like, home is just this one place where I'm rooted in isn't true for me, and isn't true for a lot of people who are in this country, because everybody has places, like, whether even not just Black people, it could just be like, you know, if you're from Ireland or you're Irish and you live in Bristol or London or whatever, like, do you know what I mean? Like, you have family in Ireland that you could go back home to. So there's a community that I think as well in storytelling, we just don't get to tell those stories. Like, the diasporan community is a massive community and it grows each year, and that's why I started writing plays in particular about that community, because I think that it ties into also questions about intergenerational experiences. Like, my parents' experience living in this country is 100% different to my experience living in this country. And then my you know, nieces and nephews, their experience living in this country is different to my experience living in this country, because now all of a sudden they've got parents who are very firmly rooted in England, and so their experiences as whether or not they call themselves African or British is totally different. Like, so I think that I'm really interested in those questions and those themes about identity and the diaspora and what is home.
Sorry. As myself, I've always been quite widely spread. I come from Hull. My dad's side of the family lives in London. My mum's side of the family lives near Halifax. I have family in Ireland. I have family in Wales, America, the Caribbean. I have family everywhere, and I've never really been so attached to any of those places. I've never really seen my family there, but I know that I come from there and I have roots there, and I love learning about those things. I love learning about my past and where I've come from. And I feel that me as a person, I love being someone with so many different cultures behind me. I love being someone who can continue to learn about myself, who can continue to learn new things about my family. And I think that even though it can be a struggle with identity, it can be aggravating to not know who you are or where you're going. It can also be a beautiful experience learning who you are and learning about yourself and your family and where you've come from. And I know that I still have a lot to learn about that myself. And if I were to read a play like this for my drama GCSE, I know that I would have loved to experience that in the classroom, to see people like me discovering themselves. And I think that that is a really beautiful thing that I'm really glad that you published. I've said that, but I am really glad that you published.
Oh, well, I'm glad. I'm happy. I'm glad that, and I'm glad that it's in schools, and I'm glad that I think that, like, I'd love for people to just be able to immerse themselves in this world and have questions. I think it's so important. Like, I don't have all the answers. It's not a play that answers all the world's questions. It doesn't solve all the problems in the world, but here is it's a slice of life, and it's a mirror of life. And I hope that people can have loads of questions about it and think deeply about, like, what identity is. And it's great.
So we have like 10 minutes left or whatever. So do you have any questions for us?
I think that, I guess that, when you're, so are you both going to be studying this in school? No? Or you just...
I finished my GCSE drama this year, so unfortunately not.
No. Okay.
I picked dance, so I don't know.
but you can take drama classes outside of school.
So I do that. I mean, actually, my group is actually mostly Black children. So
great.
So we did a library of only Black playwrights. So maybe we can get in there that other people need it.
Do the play. I don't mind. You guys should make sure you put a stage production on. That'd be great. I'd come up to Bristol to watch it.
Bola, do you have any advice for young people who want to be writers like you have so successfully done?
Oh, that's so cute. We successfully done. I'm still trying to figure it all out. But yeah, no, the advice that I would say to people is to write what you know. That's the first thing. I think write worlds that you know. And the biggest thing I would say is actually write it. I think don't worry about whether or not it looks like it should be a play, or worry too much about structure, or worry too much about like, if you've got an idea about a play, don't leave it in your head. Put it down on paper, put it down on a computer screen, and write the play and write. Because one thing that's going to happen within your writing career is that you are going to rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. Like that is a process of writing, is that you're going to go over it again and to try and get it right. So I think that, yeah, the best thing to do is to write your ideas down and to write the plays and keep practicing and observe people, observe worlds. If you're going to tell a story, you've got to learn how to tell stories. So read loads of plays, watch loads of stuff, and that will give you a good kind of like way in.
Did you ever feel like, I suppose you could say like you weren't good enough in terms of being in the writing community when you started because you didn't have a background of writing, you had a background in acting, and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, imposter syndrome is definitely something that doesn't always go away, because you also feel, again, it's like if you don't know that many people, I mean, now I do, there is definitely a community of Black writers that I know, and also writers who've come before me that I didn't know existed, but now I do. So I think that, like, yeah, there are times where I've always felt like, and when you're writing a play, when you're writing a script, I think when you're writing your first draft, you always look at it and go, oh my God, this is not good. This is really bad. This is really bad. But again, it's one of those things that I think it's a process. That's part of the process. You're going to write stuff. You're going to write scenes that might not work. But the idea is to just keep going and keep going and keep going. And what was part of your question again? You said, did I know?
Like, how did you overcome it?
How did I overcome it? I mean, I love writing and I want to see my stuff on stage and I want to see people read it. And I like I'm one of those creatives that I'd like to see actors act. So the only way to overcome it is to write and is to create pieces that people can act in. And so that's the thing that I focus the most on.
So I think if you have any questions to ask us, you can. I think
you guys, are you aspiring to be writers as well then?
I don't know what I want to do. I love writing. I would like to say that I'm not terrible at it, but we'll see.
Oh my God, so sorry.
We'll see where that goes. I don't know. I've never known what I wanted to do. But.
Yeah, me too. I don't know. A little bit of everything. I want to do acting, I want to do writing, I want to be a dancer, I want to be a lawyer. And I haven't found something that I can do that includes all of those things, but I don't stretch myself out too much, you know?
You shouldn't. Try it all. You're young. Like, the aim at your age is to try it and fail and try it and fail and try and fail until you figure out what you want to do. There's no pressure for you to become and do anything at this age and know what you're going to do right now. Try it all, because you've got the freedom to try it all, and make sure you utilize that freedom, because when you get older, you ain't going to have all the time.
Yeah, definitely. In my group right now, we do tend to like write like I suppose our shows, because we never perform anyone else's, we always do our own. So like the other day I was sitting,
but it's interesting to do your own shows.
Like, yeah, the other day I was sitting down and writing, like I had to rewrite out my whole script. I was like, oh, this is so annoying, this is so long. But when I finished it, I was like, oh my God, no, this is so quintessentially you. Yeah. Like, no better feeling, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. And keep doing it.